A very good morning to all the participants. Myself, Narahari, Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmaceutics, Abipa, Bangalore. In pharmacy, professionalism must always contain the skills necessary to be a capable pharmacy practitioner. It seems that pharmacy students do not become professionals after graduation from the pharmacy school. To be a professional pharmacist, students should have a lifelong commitment to the society and patients. Evolving professional knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors is a critical step in providing high quality patient care. So, in order to know this concept in depth and to know the professionalism in healthcare and the challenges that the pharmacists are going to face, today we have a speaker from Bharaj Sriram sir. He has completed his bachelor degree from the Institute of Pharmaceutical Technology, Annamalai University in the year 1990. Sir worked with Glaxo India Limited at Delhi and Haryana for 2 years. He has joined Cadila as an area manager and was working at Mangalore for 1 year. He was also in pharmacology specialization from PG from JSS College of Pharmacy, Ooty, and he secured gold medal in M Pharmacy, and he was the best outgoing student award. He has got more than 90 publications in various national and international journals for his credit, and he has received the Best Teacher Award from Tamil Nadu Dr. MGR University, Chennai, from the Governor of Tamil Nadu during the year November 2011. The chief editor of the Pharmacy Practice newsletter released from his institution. He is also a board member and reviewer of various Indian and international journals. He has also served as a doctoral committee member in various universities. He has received the award of Outstanding Pharmacy Faculty of the Year 2017, conferred by IPA Anandpur branch. He is also appointed to Secretary of the Bioethics Committee of the International Network of UNESCO Chair in Bioethics in proclamation of the establishment of Regional Nodal Center for Pharmacy Bioethics Program, Coimbatore. He is also nominated as Associate Secretary, Central Executive Council, Indian Pharmaceutical Association Education Division for the year 2018-20. He is also life member of various associations like APTI, IHPA, IPA, IGPA, ISPOR, etc. So to enlighten us regarding the professionalism in healthcare and also the challenges that we are facing, Abiper, in association with IPA, is welcoming Dr. Bhartiraj Sriram sir to begin the session, please.
Thank you so much for the nice introduction. So I'm really thankful to Abiper for inviting me to present a lecture on this professionalism in healthcare, challenges of pharmacists.
You can share the screen, sir.
Yeah. So the screen is there?
Yes, sir. Yes, it's coming.
Yeah. So at the outset, my hearty welcome to you all for this webinar. When I say hearty welcome, I always feel that heart is an important organ in the body. And I always like this organ because it keeps giving. Heart is the only organ in the body which keeps giving whatever it receives. So for any professional who are there in healthcare, it is very mandatory that we should keep giving whatever we receive. Can you hear me? So the topic given is professionalism in healthcare, challenges of pharmacists.
You're audible, sir. You're audible.
So the topic given is professionalism in healthcare, challenges of pharmacists. You might be wondering, what am I going to talk, right? I'm not going to take any classes here because anything you wanted to know, you can very well note down from your either internet or from books. A lot of resources are there available nowadays to study. So I'm not going to teach you anything because everything is available in the internet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just make you think. Once Albert Einstein said, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. Let us start. Which one do you like? One which is there in your left side or right side? I'm sure 100% all of you will say that you like the smiley, isn't it? So this smiling face is the one which is very much required whenever you need professionalism. You wanted to work as a healthcare professional, you need this smile. When do you get the smile? Only when you are happy, you will get the smile, isn't it? When you will be happy? When both your mind and heart are working together. So healthcare profession is one where both your mind and heart has to work. So there should be some balance between the heart and the mind. Mind always favors you, right? Heart will tell you which is right or which is wrong. So by hearing to the heart, you have to use your mind and you have to work as a healthcare professional. I would like to start with some positive note. So it is in abroad, in US, pharmacists are one of the highest paid graduates in the healthcare industry. Again, a lot of statistics are there where the pharmacy managers are given more salary. When the salary is more, this is in 2016, on seeing this slide, I want to know how much the pharmacy manager is getting now in 2019 in the latest one. So when I go through this same source, that Glassdoor is the source from where I have taken this. So the source says that pharmacy manager is in number 2 position, the highest paying jobs in America. Pharmacy manager ranks number 2. Right? You know, previously he was in number 5th position, and now he is in number 2. There are a lot of countries where the growth of the career as pharmacist is keep on in the upper grade or keep on rising. When I say growth, all of us are working for salary, isn't it? So even though we are a healthcare team, we want salary for our survival. So here, it is said that 14% growth of this pharmacy profession. And this slide will give you an overall view, which are all the states who are paying more in abroad, which are all the areas where there is high employment. Hello.
It is there, ma. It is there.
Hello. So I think all of this.
We'll go.
Hello.
With the thing, laptop.
I think some disturbance is there. Hello. 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 Am I audible? Okay.
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir. You're
A lot
audible.
of disturbance, in between, a lot of disturbance is coming. Somebody is talking, and yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Please take care. Okay, right. So in abroad
Sure.
countries, it's very well given. It's very well made it. They have made it clear that there is growth for pharmacy profession, right? Even in Australia, it is said that even though the number of pharmacists are there, but the people who have the capability, who have the skill, are very less. So always you should remember that there is a difference between knowledge and skill. Knowledge is what you gain, but skill is what you practice. So application-oriented knowledge is called as skill. So whenever you wanted to have competent pharmacists or skilled pharmacists, that is what they are looking for. So even in Australia, they say that 50% of vacancies are there, even though there are around 3 applicants per vacancy, but the suitable candidate is very less. There is one more survey that is conducted, that is called as Roy Morgan Image of Professional Survey, again in Australia. It also says that pharmacists are rated very high. Nurses, doctors, and pharmacists. All of the 3 people who are in the first 3 places, they're all healthcare professionals. So healthcare professionals are rated very high. Even this Gallup poll, this poll normally in the month of December, they'll be publishing it every year. Around 28 occupations they will be screening. They will be asking the public for their opinion regarding the honesty and ethical standards of people who are all in this area. So it is found that pharmacists, again, they are rated very high. And the recent one says that pharmacists are in the first 5 positions, right? When you ask about the honesty and ethical standards in abroad. Again, there is a source from Mayock's Health Survey, that is on how much the consumer has trust on the healthcare professional. It is said that pharmacists are rated very high and the consumers have got trust over the pharmacist really very high. That is 60% of them have answered that pharmacist. And when compared to the doctors, even the pharmacists have got a lot of trustworthy. They are all considered as trustworthy people. You might be asking me, okay, sir, it's everything is in abroad. You say everything is good in abroad, but what about in India? I once again tell you there are a lot of reasons I will say that I am proud to be an Indian pharmacist. Why, you know? See, India is the 3rd largest producer of medicine by volume in the world, and we are the 2nd largest in our workforce. It is said that more than 80% of the AIDS drug, antiretroviral drugs used, it is from India. And more than 40% of the drugs used in the United States are from India. And we have the highest number of US FDA approved forms. We've got around 584 plants in India, and every 3rd pill taken in the world is from India. And 1 in 2 vaccines used in the world is from India. And I am proud that I am a pharmacist. I'm sure all of you are proud that we are pharmacists. More than 20,000 pharmaceutical firms are there in India, and we are considered to be the pharma hub of the world. We should be also happy to share that a lot of schemes are going on. The medicines are affordable in India when compared to other countries. The price of the medicines are affordable. I'll give you just one small example here. The price of certain medicines, anti-cancer medicines, it is around 13,500 rupees in India, whereas the same costs around 85,000 rupees in USA. There is another product called as Gleevec, which is again only 11,000 rupees, whereas the same costs 1.6 lakhs in USA, right? So all these things, how it is all possible in India. So India, the Indian government will not encourage the secondary patent. What does it mean? What is secondary patent? We know that whenever a drug is discovered, for 20 years they keep the patency, the company keeps the patency, right? And at the end of that 20 years, the drug comes to the market. The drug comes to the market so that others can freely, without patent, the drug is off patent and anybody can manufacture it. But this case, the secondary patent, at the end of this 20 years, some of the companies, they'll go for slight change the molecule and they'll ask for another 20 years of patenting. So this is not allowed in India, and that is one reason why there are a lot of blockbuster medicines in affordable prices in India. We also say that we are the healing power, and we serve around more than 250,000 people, the international people, every year. That means it's called health tourism. People from abroad countries, they come to India, they get treated here for less cost, they get high quality accredited facilities. So all the facilities we have got are good, great facilities, high quality facilities, sophisticated equipments are there, good hospitals are there at less cost. The treatment is done. They've got a lot of strength as pharmaceutical companies, the cost advantage, as I said. We've got highly trained manpower. We've got strong backup with English when compared to China. We've got strong IT skills. Large number of DMF are there. What is that DMF? Drug master files. When I say drug master file, whenever you wanted to invent a new drug, you have to get the details of all those things. You have to submit all the details. So more drug master files are submitted by India than any other countries. So we have got a lot of US FDA approved facilities. So all these advantages are there for the Indian pharmaceutical companies. And again, I will say that I am proud that I'm an Indian pharmacist. But at the same time, we also have a lot of disorders or diseases. It is said that the communicable diseases, cardiovascular diseases, the chronic diseases, a lot of disorders are still there in India. We were not, alarmingly, it keeps increasing. We say that we are the pharmaceutical hub of the world. We got lots and lots of products, pharmaceutical products, quality products are available with us, but still we were not able to combat or reduce these diseases. Why? What is the reason? If you see, the heart and circulatory disorders are very high throughout the world. That is said to be number one. When you order it, what are the first 10 disorders, the 10 causes of death? It's like this. This is a source from CDC, right? Center for Disease Control in USA. So ischemic heart disease, COPD, stroke, diarrheal disorders, respiratory tract infection, TB, asthma, diabetes. Like this, there are 10 causes of death, top 10 causes. Stress is seen to be one of the most applicable reason for all these disorders. There are lots and lots of articles says that stress-induced diabetes, stress-induced hypertension, stress-induced ulcer. So lot of disorders are mainly because of stress. When do you stress? Suppose when you strain, and if you stress, the cortisol level in the body, the ACTH hormone increases. And this cortisol level, the stress can cause increased sugar level in the body, can cause diabetes. There are a lot of studies going on, the stress-induced disorders. What happens when you are in stress? When you are in stress, the hormones or the chemicals in the body keeps acting. I'll take few examples here. Dopamine, serotonin, endorphin, oxytocin. Take the first one, DOSC, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin. This endorphin is called as happy hormones. Whenever you keep yourself happy, these endorphins are more in the body. So the body is full of chemistry or chemical hormones. See this child. This child, see the happy face in the child. The entire world for this child is the piece of the chocolate cake. I'd like to mention about her here. She is Louise Hay. This Louise Hay, she is a teacher in US, and she is identified with breast cancer in the age of 54. And the doctors have identified that you are in the last stage, maybe in another 2 to 3 months, she is going to die. What she did, so even though only 2 to 3 months are there, she felt happy. She said, okay, anyway, I'm going to die. Let me share everything, whatever I have with me, either the money or food or whatever it is. She lived happily. And for your surprise, I'm telling you, she lived up to the age of 94. From 54 up to the age of 94, she lived because the hormones or the chemicals in her body, the happy hormones were secreting. She was happily not discussing anything about her cancer disease. She was happy and she keeps on giving things, whatever she could. Whenever I say happiness, for everyone, happiness is different. It is your choice how to make yourself happy, isn't it? Some people are happy listening to the music. Some people are happy watching a movie, of course, with a good partner. Some people are happy diving in a pool in the morning. Some people are happy going for a long drive. Some people are happy when they work out in the gym in the morning. And some of them playing cricket gives them happiness. Some of them dancing, they are satisfied and they are happy. There are people who keeps on counting money repeatedly. So they get happiness by counting the money. Some people are happy reading books. When you give the credit card, female are happy going on shopping. Some people are happy on photo shoot. Some people are happy chatting with their friends. Some people are very active and happy when they do some group work, group task. Traveling gives happiness. Some of them buying gold or jewels brings happiness. What is the real happiness actually? You know what is the real happiness for a person? When you help others without expecting anything from them, that is the real happiness which could really make a person happy. I was just thinking, because I'm a teacher, being a teacher, what gives me the happiness? When I make my students understand a simple concept, right? It gives me happiness. As a teacher, the happiness for a teacher is to make things understand. Everything is available in the book, everything, knowledge is there, but transform that knowledge into understandable manner, into the skill to the students. That is the work of a teacher. In pharma education, we study lots and lots of subjects. I'm very sure that all of you will agree that pharmacy is one course where more number of subjects are studied. I will compete or I will challenge with anyone saying that this many number of subjects are not studied in anywhere, in any part of the world, in any course. We study around 25 to 30 subjects before we complete our pharmacy education. And all these subjects, where it should be useful. It should be useful in therapy, isn't it? Whenever the treatment part is there, it should get a good treatment for the patient, and ultimately in the healthcare for the patient care, whatever we have studied, it should be useful. The education what we get is knowledge-based, and this knowledge-based education should be transformed to practice-based education. This slide gives you a clear-cut idea how much of medicines we are consuming in 1 year. In last year, that is from October 2018 to September 2019, it was said that we have consumed 1,36,802 crore rupee of medicines. Just in 1 year, this much of medicine is consumed in India. Volume, that is the rupee wise. If you see which medicine we have consumed more, we have consumed more of anti-infectives, antibiotics. Next, cardiac medications, then gastrointestinal related medications, respiratory problems. So all these medications, we have, even though we say that we manufacture these medications, at the same time, the consumption of these medications is also more. If you see the public health scenario in India, we rank 130 in the Human Development Index. What is this Human Development Index? Depending on the health, depending on the education and economy, by considering these three factors, they give an index for that particular country. And recently we have moved little up, that is 129th position we have come. So India ranks 129th on the Human Development Index. Even though we are ranking like this, still we have got a lot of problems facing the country. It is said that around 47% of the general population are anemic, and it is said the mortality of children below the age of 5 is 50 per 50,000 live birth, and it is also said the maternal mortality ratio is very high in India, and GDP is less when compared to the other countries. So on every allopathic government doctor, only one doctor is available on an average of 11,000 patients. Now, we have a lot of medications. Yes, in the pharmaceutical market, 20,000 pharmaceutical companies are there. They are manufacturing a lot of medications. Then where lies the problem? The problem is the medications are good. The medicines are good. The pharmaceutical companies are good. But when the patient takes it, the actual effectiveness, what is expected, is not achieved. Why? What is the reason? There is a gap between the proven efficacy and the actual effectiveness. Why? Where is the problem? Say, for example, a company says that you take this medication, you will be recovered of your respiratory infections in just maybe around 3 to 5 days. But at the same time, the company does not, always get the actual effectiveness. Say, for example, you say throat infection, azithromycin is given by the doctor. Around 3 days you take it, 500 milligram once daily, take for 3 days. The patient taking it correctly, but still they were not able to get rid of that throat infection. Why? The reason is, if the azithromycin is taken half an hour before food, and this small information, if it is informed to the patient, it is very well 100% efficacy can be achieved. Normally, what do they think? Antibiotics, okay, after taking food, they'll take. But azithromycin, if it is taken half an hour before food, then the actual effectiveness can be achieved. So the more than the product, the patient-oriented approach is very much essential. The products are good, pharmaceutical companies are good, the product is good, the medicine is good, but the patient education is a must. That is the need of the hour. If it is not done, what happens is the cost of the problem will be more than the cost of the medicine. It is said that we are the diabetic capital of the world. Why this? See, this atorvastatin is one medicine which is being used widely. Even a slight increase in the LDL levels, they start with atorvastatin, 5 milligram or 10 milligram, up to 80 milligram it can be taken, you know that. So these atorvastatins, long-term use can cause diabetes. Steroid use, long-term use of steroids, inhaled steroids, whatever the way you use it, it can cause diabetes. Antibiotics like fluoroquinolones, when you take, unnecessary fluoroquinolone use can cause diabetes. There are a lot of reasons why this diabetes comes. Still, we were not able to get rid of tuberculosis from the country. It is said that 480,000 cases of multiple drug-resistant TB is still there in the country. Like polio, we wanted to get rid of this TB also, but the government has taken a lot of initiatives, the DOTS therapy, RNTCP programs, a lot of programs they have been conducting, but still we were not able to take out of the country the TB. This is all why? Because the patient awareness is less. You know, government has come out with one Schedule H1 drugs. What is the Schedule H1 drugs? Like we know, all of us know Schedule H drugs, that is prescription drugs. Only against prescription that those drugs have to be given. What is Schedule H1? This Schedule H1, whatever the prescription it is written, say for example, it is written for 5 days, the pharmacist have to give the entire regimen. Full 5 days it has to be dispensed. It should not be dispensed for 1 or 2 days, even though the patient asks for it. And they have to keep a copy of the prescription. So they're all Schedule H1 drugs because to avoid few of the resistance developed by the microorganisms and also to avoid unnecessary irrational use of these drugs, the Schedule H1 drug is introduced. Out of these 46 drugs, 32 are antibiotics. If you see the Schedule H1, total 46 drugs are there. Out of this, 32 are antibiotics. And if you see, all anti-tubercular medications are there in this. That's why I said these anti-tubercular medications are coming under Schedule H1 drugs. So drugs has to be used. It should not be misused or abused. Medicines, when not used appropriately, becomes medicine. Always remember that drugs are the same, but patients are different. This concept was not there previously. Whenever you get fever, paracetamol, yes, for everyone paracetamol, fine. But drug is same, paracetamol is same, but patients are different. Suppose if the patient has got hepatic problems, you have to adjust the dose of even the paracetamol. Suppose if the patient have got liver disorders or kidney disorders, you need to adjust the dose. So drugs are the same, but patients are different. There comes the concept of personalized medicine. It doesn't fit for all. One size doesn't fit for all. Personalized medicine is individualized drug therapy, depending on the patient conditions, depending on the lab values, depending on the genetic makeup, depending on the patient, individual patient, the therapy changes. There are a few alternate names for this personalized medicine. They are called as precision medicine or theranostics or stratified medicine. Here the basics is the same. You have to tailor make according to the individual patient's risk and the disease. I'll give you one small example. For example, colon cancer is there. Previously, what they say is just one drug, that particular drug acts for the colon cancer, whether it will have good effect or whether they will not have any effect or whether they will produce some adverse effect. Whereas the personalized medicine, what they say is even though the person is having colon cancer, they will check which part it is affected, any gene responsible for it. They will identify that particular gene, they will do some lab investigations, and the therapy is individualized. So here, the individualized drug therapy will lead to good effect for the patient, at the same time minimize the adverse effects. So the major significance of this personalized medicine is pharmacogenomics. What is this pharmacogenomics? Just seeing the genetic information or genetic makeup. Is there any genetic changes happens because of the disease? If you identify that, then the particular disease can be addressed to the point. Previously, we had radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery for cancer. But now, as I said, it is genetic-based gene sequencing. So gene responsible for that particular cancer is identified and it is targeted, and this targeted therapy gives you less side effects. One classical example I tell you, Batten's disease. This is a disease of neurological condition. There is a girl, 80-year-old girl, who had this Batten's disease. So what did they do is till at 3 years, the girl was functioning nicely. But after that, because of neurological symptoms, she could not walk. She was having the terrible illness was there. And ultimately, they could identify the gene responsible for the disease. And once they identified the gene, they targeted only that gene and they have cured the disease. So the drug name given here is Milasen. The name of the girl who got affected with Batten disease, her name is Mila. So they have kept the name of the drug Milasen. And the mutated gene which was identified or responsible for the disorder, Batten disease, is MFS-T8 gene. So this is the future: genomics, genetics, and big data. You have to have individualized drug therapy for all the patients. I'll give you a few examples more. There's impaired hepatic blood flow is there, for example. So the drug will have reduction in the first pass metabolism so that the drug availability in the body, the bioavailability will be more. So what will happen is, suppose if morphine is given to the patient who are having some liver problems or liver cirrhosis, the quantity of morphine given will go to toxicity. That is, the bioavailability of morphine will be doubled when the liver is not working properly. Similarly, if the people who are not having albumin production properly, or if there is altered volume of distribution. See, albumin is a plasma protein. We know that all the acidic drugs will get bind with albumin, and all the basic drugs will get bind with alpha-glycoprotein. So this albumin, if it is less in the body, normally when age advances, albumin will be less. And not only that, in burn patients, the patients who have got burn injury, for them the albumin will be less. So if there is albumin less, decreased protein binding, and the free drug will be more in the plasma, it can cause increased toxicity. When a drug is developed in the market, it has undergone a lot of stages. Say, for example, stage 0 to stage 4, or phase 0 to phase 4. Phase 0 is micro studies. Very small quantity, the drug is studied in the patient. Then phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and post-marketing studies. With a lot of money involved, with a lot of dollars of money spent on the drug comes to the market with both preclinical and clinical testing. But when it comes to the market, and ultimately again it has to go out of the market very early, then think of the amount of money, amount of work spent on that particular invention. The classical example is antibiotic discoveries. If you see here, this slide gives you a clear picture. Penicillin antibiotics were discovered in 1928, and the resistance by the microorganism developed in 1940 itself. Similarly, carbapenem group of antibiotics, 1985 it was discovered, and in 1993 itself, the microorganism produced resistance. Even though we have got lots and lots of antibiotics available in the market, ultimately it is said that within 8 years, the microorganism developed resistance. Whatever be the new antibiotics you have brought to the market, within 8 years of span of time, the microorganism produce resistance. And this is because one reason is the consumption of antibiotics, irrational consumption is more in India. It is said that if you keep doing like this, the carbapenem group of antibiotics, if we are irrationally using it, then 100% the pneumonia could not be cured. The Klebsiella pneumonia resistant to carbapenem will be, in 2030, if the present situation goes, will not have any antibiotics for the treatment of pneumonia. All of us know about colistin resistance. In China, they have come across colistin resistance, this colistin antibiotics. These antibiotics are being used tons and tons in plowing fields as insecticide. So what happens is, whatever the plant which is coming out or which is grown in that plowing field, they'll have colistin. And the animal which feed on it, they'll have colistin. And the human being which feed on, who take that particular meat or that animal product, they can get colistin. So colistin resistance happens very, very, in the recent period, recent past, the colistin resistant is a very much threat for the entire world. It was found that in Chennai, they have conducted some survey, both by Apollo Cancer Research Hospital as well as the Christian Medical College, Vellore. In 22 locations, they have taken samples, and it was found that around 46.4% of the samples are having highly resistant bacteria. So what is the reason for all these things? Even the tomato and the apples, they've got the resistance bacteria. The main reason is the awareness among the public is very less. This is a survey conducted by the World Health Organization. Around 10,000 people, they have done the survey to know the public opinion about what is antibiotic resistance. it was found that 76% of the respondents, they said antibiotic resistance means my body will become resistant to antibiotic. They don't even know that the bacteria is producing resistance. They think that my body is resistant to the antibiotics. So patient-oriented approach is very much essential. For the past 4 years, the Antibiotic Awareness Week is mentioned by the World Health Organization. This year it is 18th to 24th November. Last year, 2019, also the same date they have announced, 18th to 24th November. The previous Director General of World Health Organization, Dr. Margaret Chan, she said that next to terrorism, the resistance to antibiotic is a major threat to the world, and this threat is not in the future, it is here right now. The present Director General of World Health Organization, Tedros, says that there is no community in the world more precious than health. Indian government has come out with a treatment guideline in 2016. It's a 64-page document. Each and every pharmacist who are working in the hospital should go through it, should have it in hand, this 64-page document. It is very well mentioned there which particular infectious diseases, which is the antibiotic of choice, first choice, second choice, and what are the adverse effects, and if resistant, which is the alternate choice. So more than the product-oriented approach, patient-oriented approach is very much essential. More good products are available in the market, but the way how it has to be taken, it has to be explained to the patient properly. Who has to explain to the patient? Of course, the doctors. Doctors are there. They are the one who are treating the patients. But if you see the expected ratio, according to World Health Organization, for every 1,000 people, there should be one doctor. But in India, in most rural cases, rural areas, it is for 30,000 people, only one doctor is available. So who can play an important role? There should be some person who knows about the medicine from the actual starting of the medicine, that is from the active pharmaceutical ingredient till it reaches the consumer. Who is the person who knows about all these things? He is the pharmacist. Soon pharmacists, we may get the authority of prescribing. Things are moving fast, but are we really ready to take it up? Whether we can fit into the healthcare professional. Of course, the Pharmacy Council of India is guiding us. It is helping us. It has come out with pharmacy practice regulation, where it is very well clearly given what are the responsibilities of a hospital pharmacist, what are the responsibilities of a clinical pharmacist, what are the responsibilities of the community pharmacist. Individually, everybody has to go through this pharmacy practice regulation. It is said that what are our responsibilities. If somebody says that patient counseling, how can a pharmacist do patient counseling? You can very well quote that it is all there in the regulation, in the Gazette, that clinical pharmacists can do patient counseling. There are a lot of errors. Medication errors are happening, not only here, in abroad countries also, right? So prescription error by the prescribers, pharmacist error, nursing error. So all these errors have to be minimized, then only the patient can. These are all the challenges for us. Whenever a prescription is seen by the pharmacist, few things they have to, first of all, note down. I call it as document, D-O-C-U-M-E-N-T, document. Whether the drug selected by the prescriber is correct. Is there any overdose or underdose? Whether the patient is compliant, especially in the chronic therapy, whether the patient is compliant to the treatment. Is there any undertreated condition? Whether drug monitoring is required for its toxicity, or is there any adverse reactions, and whether education to the public or the patient is given or not. When we do all these things, the subjects, whatever we have studied, should help us. We should integrate whatever we have studied. Maybe in the first year you study about physiology, second year pathophysiology, then pharmacotherapy, pharmacology, all these, whatever we study, should help them in treating a patient. One has to be very clearly update themselves regarding the drug safeties, because the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission is doing a very good job. They are sending the safety alerts, so everyone has to have a knowledge about drug safety. Recently, about norfloxacin, there was an article, right? They have given alarming warning that fluoroquinolones, especially norfloxacin, can cause rupture of the main aorta. The main aorta is the largest artery in the body. Once it is ruptured, then the entire blood circulation to the body is hampered. So see to it that this particular drug, whenever it is used, fluoroquinolones, it has to be used with caution. Of course, fluoroquinolones should not be used in children below 12 years, All of us know that it affects the bone growth. So one should also know, if you come across any adverse drug effects or adverse drug reactions, where to report, how to report. I'm not going in detail because it itself is a separate area, right? I'm telling you which are all the challenges, how we are going to face all these things, where and all we need to concentrate. During the ward rounds in the hospital, the particular pharmacists have to discuss with the doctors. They should question themselves what, why, when, and how. What for this drug is prescribed, why this drug is prescribed to the patient, how it has to be taken, when it should be given, is there any adverse effects? All these questions should come in mind. And always remember that the choice of the drug is very important. Here I'm telling you a simple example. A male patient of 50 years complaining of chest pain, retrosternal radiating left upper limb, and he is a known case of coronary artery disease. He is having hypertension for the past 1 month. Now presently the doctor has prescribed clopidogrel with Indrall. Indrall is propranolol, it's a trade name. So this non-selective beta blocker is given to the patient. Now, when examining this patient, it was found that he is having stage 1 hypertension. We know there are different category of drugs available for the management of hypertension. Diuretics are the first drug of choice. We have studied theoretically diuretics are the first drug of choice, especially the thiazide diuretics. But remember whether this particular diuretics will be helpful for this patient. So pharmacists have to intervene. He has to study and find out that, yes, thiazides, if it is given, it can cause uric acid retention, it can cause hypokalemia, hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia. There are a lot of factors can happen for this particular patient. Whether ACE inhibitors can be given. Here also there are some patients where angina develops. Around 3% of the patient develops angina when you give ACE inhibitors. Reports are there. So proteinuria, hyperkalemia, in renally impaired patient, it is not advisable to give ACE inhibitors. How about ARBs? They also cause hyperkalemia. What about beta blockers in this patient? So it should be given with caution, especially for the peripheral vascular disease patient, and it's a bradycardia patient, and it can cause hypoglycemia. What about calcium channel blockers? These calcium channel blockers will not give any electrolyte disturbance, and it can be used with patients with a high coronary artery disease or coronary risk. As the patient is already having the coronary artery disease, here the best choice is calcium channel blocker. So like this, individually, the drug has to be analyzed. Another small case here, a known case of diabetes with hypertension. The drugs given here, if you see, there are 2 drugs mainly, amiodarone and warfarin. If it is given, it can cause the elevated INR ratio. So this INR ratio, if it is elevated, bleeding happens. So they have to reduce the dose of warfarin. 30 to 50% reduction in the dose of warfarin is suggested. So the knowledge, whatever you study, has to be transformed to the skill. Whenever you practice, it has to be transformed to the skill. So the knowledge, skill, and attitude gives you a good performance. Always remember that patient-oriented approach commands respect for the pharmacist. This is how the pharmacists in abroad countries are paid well, respected more because they do patient care services. When I say patient care services, simple examples I'll tell you. If you come across a prescription containing levofloxacin with diclofenac, this levofloxacin diclofenac should not be taken together because fluoroquinolones and NSAIDs together can cause epilepsy. There are lots and lots of reports which mentions that combination of these two can lead to epilepsy. Simple combination of rabiprazole and clopidogrel should never be taken together. It should be spaced out because there are a lot of reports that stroke can come for the patients who are taking these combinations. Nitrofurantoin, Citralca, individually they are very good drugs for urinary tract infection. Whenever there is, you want to alkalize the urine to bring out the bacteria outside, yes, Citralca is given. But at the same time, nitrofurantoin, it's a urinary antiseptic. It acts only in acidic medium. And when these two are combined, the nitrofurantoin effect is lost. So this should be given, but it should be spaced out and given. A lot of examples like that. Ondansetron with fluconazole increases the QT interval prolongation, that is arrhythmia, so it should not be given. Similarly, cotrimoxazole with fluconazole combination, it's again a major interaction. The QT interval prolongation is there. It should not be given together. Pioglitazone with insulin, major drug interaction. congestive heart failure can happen when these two combinations, deadly combinations. Whenever you study about the drugs, please remember what are the positives and negatives of the drug. I've given few examples here. For example, diuretics, the first drug of choice for hypertension, of course. Economically, it is cheap, cost-wise, right? Most suitable for elderly, everything is fine. But diuretics can cause change in the electrolyte levels, right? So it is contraindicated for gout patients. So like this, each and every category of drugs, class of drugs, you should know the positives and negatives of those drugs. Whenever you come across patients, you should be able to explain all those information to the patient about the disease and the drugs. You should get trained yourself. You should have the training at your place with the help of the folders. When I say folders, right, it can be made by yourself for each and every disease. These are the folders what we have made and kept here in Ramakrishna. Sometimes when the patient doesn't have time to listen to you all those things, suppose it is outpatient, you can give them the information leaflets, patient information leaflets pertaining to their diseases. Always remember that you should have all the adequate facilities to do all this counseling as well as the patient information leaflets. These are the centers. See, these patient information leaflets or folder can be used to the patients so that pictorial representation of the disease or about the drugs will easily make them understand. Even in the hospital, you can go to the bedside and use these folders and patient counseling can be done. So ultimately, please understand that you have to use the patient counseling aids. So many times when I ask the students about the insulin dose, they were not able to say, how do they calculate the dose? So this is just a small information which I want to tell you, right? Per kg body weight, 0.2 to 0.4 units of insulin should be given. This is the standard, right? Or otherwise, 0.55 into total body weight. In abroad countries, body weight is calculated in pounds. So if it is in pounds, you have to divide by 4. A small example is given. Right? If body weight is 55 kgs, 55 into 0.5, right? 30 units of insulin. And if you wanted to know, there is a sliding scale for insulin. It's a standard sliding scale, right? So above 150 to 200 for each 50 units, 50 increase milligram percentage, you have to give 2 units of insulin. Suppose if you wanted to know how much 1 unit of insulin, how many milligrams of sugar is dropped by 1 unit of insulin, there is a calculation called as rule of 1500 or rule of 1800. So using this, you can know how much sugar level will be reduced by each unit of insulin. About the newer drugs launched in the market, we should be also have, as a pharmacist, who are working in a clinical pharmacy or in the community pharmacy, we should have the knowledge of the recently coming out drugs. A little knowledge about the food interaction also is required. Say, for example, a person is given NSAID, a painkiller, to alleviate the pain, but the pain is not, you are not getting rid of the pain. Suppose the patient come and says that the doctor has given me the analgesic, but still I have not relieved of the pain. Please check whether any tomato-related products are taken by that particular patient on that day. Because tomato contains a chemical component called as solanin, which can precipitate headache, and it also will not allow the NSAIDs to work. Similarly, banana can cause headache because thiamine-rich food. Again, apple, along with the seeds, if apple is taken, the apple seeds contain a chemical component called as amygdalin. If it is taken continuously, then it can accumulate and get converted into hydrogen cyanide. So lots and lots of small drug interactions also need to be explained. So many patients come and ask in the hospital whether vegetarian food is good or non-vegetarian food is good. If the patient is vegetarian, I will say these examples. See, Abdul Kalam Ji is vegetarian, Albert Einstein is vegetarian, the famous Carl Lewis in Olympics, he is a sprinter, he is a vegetarian. So a lot of examples we can say the vegetarians who have had fantastic lifestyle and quality of life. It is also said that in the hospital visit, 22% less for the vegetarian than non-vegetarians. But at the same time, when a non-vegetarian comes and asks, is it good to take non-vegetarian? What I'll say is, yes, non-vegetarian food is the one which has got vitamin B12 more, which is not there available in vegetarian food. So vitamin B12 deficiency is more in vegetarian, but you will not get vitamin B12 deficiency. So depending on the patient's condition, depending on the patient nature, the pharmacist should be able to tackle. There are lots and lots of challenges. You need to tackle the healthcare professional. You need to tackle the patients. Ultimate aim of pharmacists should be healthcare. So always remember, you may think that you have told me so many things there where to start. Anything big has to start from a small thing. And the first step to success is to believe yourself, yes, I am a good pharmacist. I can do wonders. I can be a part of healthcare team. Always face yourself big. So success depends on your knowledge, practice, skill, and attitude. You are the next generation pharmacist. We can provide quality patient care through you. Be proud to be a pharmacist. Thank you. Thank you so much for the patient listening. Thank you.